What's going on, draft fans? Welcome back, Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Brown, here on a Thursday night doing the show, getting caught up with the Senior Bowl roster that was revealed earlier this week on the Move the Sticks podcast with Bucky Brooks, Daniel Jeremiah, Jim Nagy, and Rhett Lewis. It was a very good podcast. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's very informative, gives you the whole breakdown for everything down in Mobile, Alabama. But also, in the last 24 hours, we got the flight booked. We got the hotel booked. We're right down the street from Veets, so come check us out for a beer or two. And, of course, find me over on the practice field somewhere. I'll be the only one repping Cover One this year, so I'll be doing a little bit of solo stuff, so don't be a stranger. Come talk to me and that type of stuff. But earlier this week, we did the sexy positions, right? The quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs, and tight ends. And we did a big group, didn't really give it necessarily the full-on due diligence because I'm assuming I will get a lot of questions between now and the Senior Bowl, where I'll be going into detail about, a little bit more of Abram Smith from Baylor or Jerome Ford from Cincinnati, which was announced last night. I'll go into more detail about Dontario Drummond out of Ole Miss and stuff like that. So we'll get into those bigger names and those sexier picks, if you will, another time. And I will get into more detail with this upcoming group. But I wanted to focus a little bit of tonight, take 15, 20 minutes, talk a little bit about the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen, touch briefly on both sides of the football. I'll start with the offensive tackles. I'll move to the interior guys. Then we'll go to edge rusher and then the defensive tackles. But I just... For starters, I love offensive linemen. I love defensive linemen. I love trench play. My goal here is to get some of the most respected offensive line and defensive line people in the business to join me before the Senior Bowl to talk about some of these guys, to give you an even bigger and deeper dive and an incredibly accurate analysis of these players. We will get there. But I want to start with offensive tackles first. Back when I had COVID back in November, I was, 10, 11 day in a row couch potato. So I watched a ton of these offensive tackles, and I'm super excited about them. Daniel Falee out of Minnesota, the 6'8", 370 offensive tackle, I think can play right tackle. I really do. I think he's got really quick feet for a player of his size. And, I mean, you can't get around this guy. He's 6'8". And he was one of the, I want to say one of the first offensive tackles that accepted a Senior Bowl invite. It feels like months ago that we heard about him going to Mobile. So Daniel Falee is really talented. I think there's some potential that he could go in the first round. I really do. I think the second round makes a lot more sense. That would be right now where that projected grade is for me. But anything can happen. Anything can change. But he is a fun watch, and I think in those one-on-ones, he could make some serious coin when we get down there. So I would keep tabs on him if you haven't. He is definitely one of the better offensive tackles, I think, in the group. And when you talk like upside and you talk about players of that size, we don't really talk about those guys because they're a rare breed. But you can bring in, the conversation of like an Orlando Brown or something like that, and it would make sense. And I don't want to say that's where, that's what he's going to be. That's a little rich, but you never know with these types of players. And with a guy like this, with that type of potential upside and just that overall skill set, I think he can really work out. Now, there are times where he looks a little bit slower, not always consistent in between reps, but just when you talk about footwork, grip strength, and that ability to anchor, he is so consistent, and obviously him as a run blocker, forget about it. So Daniel Falee out of Minnesota, really keep tabs on him. I think Senior Bowl week, he could have a great week. Next is going to be Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah, not Southern Illinois. Fun player, man. He really is a fun player that has this potential to... With his athleticism. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a super high draft pick, but at 6'7", 310, he can be somebody that can really flourish, I think, in an offense where he might be able to be a little bit more of a swing tackle. I don't want to say he's going to be that offensive tackle that's going to be designated just simply to the right side or the left side. I think he could be that swing tackle in a sense. He's got good footwork overall. Things can get a little bit out of whack. His hand placement can be a little bit sporadic at times. But Braxton Jones, Southern Utah, could really take a big step in those one-on-ones. We always talk about that stuff. I think with that athleticism, though, you can get some really good reach blocks out of a guy like that. I think the biggest question overall is just, what's he look like against the true Division I talent that's in college football that we see transition into the NFL? How will he do handling a guy that really masters speed to power? How does he do with a guy that has a plethora of pass rush moves, a really good pass rush plan? It doesn't always really work out for most offensive linemen when you're lined up, against Khalil Mack or TJ Watt or something like that. But can you win some of those reps? Braxton Jones, maybe not right now, but a very good development tackle, I think, that has some of that swing tackle capability. So it's always fun to see that. Next would be Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. 6'7", 329 is what he's listed at. And I love his athleticism. I love the nastiness that he plays with. And I know I mentioned Daniel Falee out of Minnesota as being a potential first rounder. I think Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa really can become that. He is somebody that just can chip and climb. He can reach. He can do a variety of things. But beyond that, and beyond the ability to finish and just get aggressive and get nasty, I think when you look back at previous drafts, you see, Garrett Bowles, 20th overall out of Utah. What was the big thing? Nasty demeanor, played aggressive, had athleticism. Dylan Ray Dunes last year went to the Senior Bowl, North Dakota State, was a second-round pick to the Titans. Don't know why that happened. I think there was a lower body injury, if I remember correctly, that kept coming up and people were a little hesitant on. But beyond that, Trevor Penning fits kind of that mold. He's somewhere, I think, in the middle of that. And I just would not be surprised if a team in the back end of the first round looking for some offensive line help would consider a player like that. I don't want to say necessarily the Green Bay Packers because if I remember correctly, they haven't taken an offensive lineman in the first round in like decades. But beyond that, I mean, their offensive line is okay. It's pretty decent. But could they make sense? Could Buffalo make a lot of sense? Yeah, I know so many Bills fans that want new offensive linemen every single day when they watch that team. So Trevor Penning, Northern Iowa, might be that player, might be that fit for those teams in the back ends just because of his athleticism and that nasty demeanor. And I mean, he can just absolutely throw guys around. You'll love to see it. Next, Luke Gostkowski from Central Michigan, 6'6", 305. Plays right tackle. I think he can be a starter. I really do. My grade might be a little bit higher on him than most when it's all said and done. I mean, that's just the way it's shaping up to be. I'm 2 games in. I'm going to definitely watch a couple more before now in the Senior Bowl. I should have a report ready for him by then as well. But Luke Gostkowski, Central Michigan, is very talented. Health is a big concern, though. He has got to stay healthy to really develop into the player that we think he can be. That's obviously the key with any player. But I mean, he missed 2020 due to an injury, but in 2019 he started all 14 games at right tackle. He played at right tackle this past year, so he is a fun watch for the Chippewas. And Luke Gostkowski has just everything's like, I don't want to say like in line and perfect, but when you talk about proper technique, playing square, and we always mention like that guy's like a phone booth type of player. I wouldn't want to battle him in a phone booth. That means in like kind of that short square area. That makes sense. But also it can mean from a technical standpoint that this guy, everything is just squared up and technically sound the way that it's supposed to be. If he's in his kick step and his kick slide, nothing's out of whack. Nothing from a hand placement perspective as far as shooting his hands is really out of whack. So I think he's got this length, and I think, again, we mentioned athleticism with Trevor Penning. I think you can say the same thing about Luke Gostkowski. Again, not everything is like picture perfect, but it feels like it's damn near close. And he's been working with Paul Alexander this past offseason, so I think that's a big plus for him. I think he could go a lot sooner than people think, and I really thought from the film I watched, I know a lot of people like Bernard Raymond. I thought Luke Gostkowski was better than Bernard Raymond. And Raymond, the other offensive tackle from Central, former tight end, converted to offensive tackle, 6'6", 305. One of those guys as well that I think can definitely develop maybe into that swing tackle role, but he's still, I think, pretty raw for this position, formerly playing offensive tackle, stuff like that. He fairly new into football. He foreign exchange student from Austria, but he is a three-sport athlete. He did wrestling. He did track and field. People might, teams might value that. But again, 2 seasons playing tight end 2018, 2019, then makes that move to left tackle. Things look good, but he needs to clean some things up. I think he needs just a little bit more time, a little bit more polishing. And if I had to pick one to go out there and play for me next Sunday, during an off season and into the regular season, it would be Luke Gostkowski. It really would be. I mean, it's just the way I feel about it. And I think again with Gostkowski, you have a lot of value with him as a starting right tackle. So those are the Central Michigan guys. Those are a couple of other guys there on the offensive tackle side. I am going to get into the last one here. I'm skipping a couple of names because I haven't watched them yet. I'm skipping a couple of names just, again, because I want to save some stuff for when I do get a couple of guests on to talk offensive tackle play. We'll be able to kind of focus on it then. But one of my favorites, man, from this offensive tackle group, and I genuinely think it is my favorite, it's Dorian Canard, the offensive tackle out of Kentucky. I think pretty comparable to Cody Ford. You guys know I'm not a pro comp guy, but he is somebody that really has that same type of body frame, same type of just not necessarily footwork, but that grip strength, the hand placement. He can be a little sporadic with. His footwork isn't necessarily always clean or necessarily fast, but it doesn't really need to be. He's just, he gets into where he needs to be as far as depth within his sets, and he can anchor, but he's going to maul you. And I think he could probably play guard. It might be where he's best suited, but at 6'4", again, 345, he's going to go in, and I think he's going to have a really good week at the Senior Bowl. And we mentioned one-on-ones for Daniel Fili. I think the same thing here for Kinnard. I think a team if the Lions are coaching this group, I think they're going to fall in love with this guy. And it wouldn't be surprising if he ends up being a second, maybe a third round pick. It'd be crazy because there's an option. I really think we mentioned first round for, Daniel Fili or Trevor Penning. I think the same thing here for Kinnard could be in the back end. And if it is, I think Kinnard, I don't want to say the second pick for the Lions would be on Kinnard, but they're, same thing with the Packers and the Bills. I think that can all fall into play. But with Kinnard, if he's in there in that second round, it just would not surprise me if a team like Detroit fell in love with him. It wouldn't surprise me if a team like the Jets or even the Giants fell in love with them. He would make a bunch of sense there at the first half of the second round on that second day. So we'll see. I mean, that's pretty much exactly where Cody Ford went. So it would all kind of shake out to be the same. So that's the offensive tackle group. I know I missed on, Abe Lucas from Washington State, and I didn't go into a bunch of detail on, Raymond as much as I wanted to, or even Luke Gostkowski, but I will save that stuff again when I get some guests on to talk about. And then obviously the North Dakota kid and Jameer Salyer from Georgia. We'll bring some people in to talk about those guys, but I haven't watched them in depth, so I can't sit here and say, yeah, I know X, Y, and Z about them. I don't want to lie. So moving to the interior offensive line side of things, we'll start with the cream of the crop, Zion Johnson, Boston College, and actually, I'm completely lying. I missed an offensive tackle, Andrew Stuber, Michigan. Got to talk briefly about him. He's a right tackle, might play guard, but man, you think back a few years ago, Ben Bredesen, guys that just did things correctly. That's what Stuber is for Michigan. He does the little things right, and it's fun to watch. I really think he could be somebody that moves to guard, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going somewhere on that third day of the draft and almost like John Runyon when he came out of Michigan and went to the Packers, and he's been really good for them. Not really good, but he's been consistent. He's been good. I think Stuber falls into that same play or that same type of scenario for a team. Not necessarily sure what it's going to be, but I mean, he can pick up blitzes, and he's just consistent there at the right side, at that right tackle position. I like the lower body flexibility. Foot speed's not where you want it to be, but he's always looking to finish. He's always looking for work, and he's consistent. So Stuber, Michigan, keep tabs on him. 6'6", 335, or 6'7", 338, excuse me, is what he's listed at. So keep tabs on him. Going to guard, though, starting at the cream of the crop, Zion Johnson. This guy, we talk all these guys being first-round picks. This guy, I think, is legit opportunity for the first round. It seems like the more and more you get closer to the Senior Bowl, you get closer to the draft, more and more people fall in love with this guy. It feels like he's got 5-position versatility, and he could play anywhere up front. Listed at 6'3", 316. He might even fall into like that James Daniels category when he came out of Iowa. And, you look at what he's been for the Bears, not necessarily a slam dunk of a pick, but he's been a good pick, a consistent pick. And he's been somebody that's been obviously fun to watch grow within the Bears organization, but also just that transition into the NFL. So could that maybe be Zion Johnson a little bit? To an extent, absolutely. So he's been one of the best offensive linemen for Boston College over the last couple of years, and he is just somebody that you have him latch onto you, and it's kind of like game over. He's always driving. He's always trying to finish, and I think guard is where he's best suited. But like I said, wouldn't surprise me if he played a little bit of center. Wouldn't surprise me if he played a little bit of right tackle, but when you watch him, you love the consistency, and I think that's the key. He's one of the most consistent offensive linemen out of the guard group, and he's maybe one of the most consistent offensive linemen out of the entire offensive line grouping as a whole. He might be the best offensive lineman from a technical standpoint. I mean, he's just technically sound, and again, consistent, positional versatility like James Daniels. He's going to come in. I think he's going to play. He's going to earn himself some coins. So Zion Johnson, tons of fun. Marquise Hayes, Oklahoma, 6'4", 324. I've spoken about him quite a bit, and I mean, I know there's some people that are like, I don't know about this guy, and I mean, that's fine. You do you. This guy can play. I mean, this guy can go in, and he just gets freaking after it. I mean, I think the way I described it is if he wasn't playing football, he'd be in the WWE, and he would be going in and doing rolling sentons or running sentons on guys consistently. And if you don't know what that means, basically you run from like one corner to the other corner, and in the middle of the ring is somebody laying there, and you just run and jump on top of them on your back. And like, that's the way he is. He just bangs in the middle, and he just goes. He's strong, redirects defenders with ease. He's pretty consistent, I think, climbing to the second level. Not like the best polar, but he operates in space well, and like I said, he bangs. So like, if you're a defender and you're blitzing and he's in your path, and you try to like run through him or run around him, odds are he's going to knock you down and probably knock you out. So the foot speed can definitely get faster. There's times just things look like lethargic, lackadaisical, but Marquise Hayes, Oklahoma, is probably going to fall into that second, third round range somewhere, maybe the third round, but it would not surprise me, again, if he was a second round pick. I think he can carve out a role at left guard for a team, and he's going to be incredibly consistent for whatever team he goes to. Lastly, on the guards, again, like I said, I'm going to run through some of these interior offensive linemen pretty quick, but I'm just going to go to one of my next favorite ones, and that's Lucida Smith out of Tech, 6'3", 315. He is, again, one of my favorite players in this draft. We've had him on the show before, and he is just a great dude off the field, an even better dude on the field. And I said it last year, and I really don't care what anybody says, but like, I think he was somebody that really picked up a lot of the garbage in the middle, and it really helped kind of Christian Darrisaw perform on an island, not having to worry about all the time picking up blitzes or looking for work. And I get it, like that's really kind of what the guard does. But Lucida Smith is just so good at it, and he is so good at looking to finish. He's always just getting up to that second level, always going after it. And I love the aggressive nature that he plays with. And I'm sure people are going to range him in that third or fourth round, but I really would not be surprised if an NFL team with multiple picks at some point, with maybe 4 or 5 picks at some point, they take that 5th pick and use it on a player like Lucida Smith when they're trying to upgrade their offensive line. I really do believe that. I think he does a good job redirecting defenders. I think he does a good job chipping and climbing and finishing. So Lucida Smith, the nasty side that he plays with, is so damn fun. Moving over to the defensive side of the football, I'll touch briefly about this, and in the next episode we'll start with some more defensive linemen, and then we'll get into linebackers and finish it up with the secondary. But just up front, 2 quick names. I'll give an edge rusher and a defensive tackle. I'll start with my guy, Myjai Sanders, out of Cincinnati. 6'5", 255, long, athletic, can translate speed to power, maybe not as consistent as you want him to, not always consistent in the run game as far as maybe squeezing things down and holding that position off the edge, but you just look at what he does from a pressure standpoint, from a sack production standpoint, from just the length. I think there is a lot of tools to work with here. And if a team in the front half of the first round passed on an edge rusher, or even a team in the back end of the first round knew that they needed an edge rusher and knew they weren't going to get him on their second turn in the second round, I just would not be surprised if he ends up going in that first round somewhere. I think there's too much here to work with to be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take this guy. The numbers aren't always what you want him to be with 13.5 total sacks in his career. But I think from a pressure standpoint and from a hurried standpoint on the quarterback, he's been one of the most productive. I don't have those numbers up in front of me because I'm an amateur, but I will get those numbers on the next defensive show that we do over the weekend, and I will bring those up. But he is just, man, he is so good. And Myjai Sanders has been my guy for 2 years now, and I'm not gonna fall off that train because he only had 2.5 sacks. Guys all the time lack production. They struggle with something and they come in and they kill it. They crush it. So it's concerning when the numbers don't translate, but when you look at pressures and everything else, and that's, the quarterback's getting it off just half a second or tenths of a second, I'm fine with it. I can live with it because it will translate at some point, and I think Sanders can do that. So I would like to see a little bit more consistency in the run game. I would like to see I don't want to say like a pure pass rush plan, but like a pass rush plan. When he goes up, he knows exactly what he's doing. I think there's times that he goes out and he second guesses, like, oh, I was going to long arm here, but then instead I went with club rip. Just long arm, bro. Just if that's what you're going to commit to what your original plan is and go and be it. But there's, again, a lot to work with Myjai Sanders. So after that, we're going to go with Devonta Wyatt on the interior, 6'2", 315. I think he's it's hard for me to say. I think he can be potentially the second or third best defensive tackle in the draft. It would be hard for him to trump Jordan Davis just because of his size, and his movement skill for a player his size is very rare. But Devonta Wyatt, his lower body flexibility, his ability to move and just change direction. I mean, there's times he's out there, he looks like a linebacker. At 6'3", 315, he moves. He gets after it. And he's been productive. He had 23 quarterback pressures this past year. Just all, like I mentioned quarterback pressure for Myjai Sanders, and I didn't have that up. And his sack total this past year matched exactly that. Devonta Wyatt's doing that as a defensive tackle, having to deal with double teams and everything else. But I think when we mention one-on-ones, Devonta Wyatt is going to I don't want to say bully people, but I genuinely believe because of his speed, his quickness, that ability to change direction, to always play with a consistent low pad level, I think that's going to matter. He's experienced. I don't want to hear like he's tapped out or anything like that. He did play at Hutchinson Community College. Then he went to Georgia. But he's been at Georgia for 4 years. He's been productive for the last 4 years. I mean, it's not insane production, but it's productive enough. And then you just see some of these traits and you go, yeah, no, this dude can play. This guy can get after it. So I'm excited for Devonta Wyatt at the Senior Bowl. I really think he can be a big climber. I'm sure, I don't know what teams have him at, but I'm assuming, just because I haven't heard enough about him, I'm assuming that a lot of people maybe haven't gotten to him yet. Maybe they have him in that day 3 range, late day 2 or something, but I think he could go much sooner. I really do. And Devonta Wyatt, 6'3", 315, is going to get after it. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he possesses enough versatility to get after it, and I like his motor. I like his skill set. I like just kind of everything about him, I'm going to be honest. So we'll see what he can do. We'll see how it goes. We'll get into more offensive lineman stuff with, maybe like Brandon Thorne, Owen Reese, guys that I respect at the offensive line position. And we'll get into more defensive stuff over the weekend. We'll talk more about these defensive linemen. We'll talk about some linebackers. We'll have a lot of fun. There's so much to get into with the Senior Bowl, but just wanted to touch base, talk a little bit about some of these players and just keep it moving on the draft front. We'll do some stuff over the weekend. We'll have a lot of fun. Maybe we'll look at a live show for you guys over on YouTube, which, by the way, if you haven't done so already, you need to start. You need to go over to Cover One on the YouTube side of things. Check out our channel. We've got like 13,000 subscribers. No big deal. Go ahead and add yourself to the list. Hit the subscribe button. You'll see the live shows over the summer of the draft stuff. We're going to be bringing live shows during the off season with the Bills stuff. There's a ton of Bills content on there as well. Of course, you can find our podcast here on the draft side, the Cover One NFL Draft Podcast, on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, the whole 9. Just search Cover One NFL Draft Podcast and be so kind to leave us a review, drop us a rating, everything that you do. But we appreciate everything that everybody does as far as subscribing to the show, leaving comments, reaching out to me on draft stuff. I greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't done so and you want to, just find me on Twitter at RussNFLDraft. We'll have some fun with it. But until the weekend, you guys be safe, have fun. Until next time, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.